Hi, everyone. Carlin here. AI is the talk of the town these days. If you use the internet, you've almost certainly heard of companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and the seamlessly never ending launch of new tools like ChatGPT, which, for those who don't know, is an AI-powered chatbot that helps you write, brainstorm, and answer questions. Or something like Midjourney, which is an art tool that turns text descriptions into unique visuals. Elaine and I are a bit split on AI. I work in consumer tech, an industry in which understanding and using AI feels increasingly crucial from a skill set perspective. I use it for work almost daily. Elaine, on the other hand, is one of the few people I know who hasn't bought in whatsoever. But one thing Elaine and I do agree on is that we are fearful of how AI might replace person-to-person connection. Research has shown us again and again the negative impact social media has had on human interactions. What might AI also do, and what has it already done? So join us today as we explore just that. Again, I'm Carlin.
And I'm Elaine.
Welcome back to our podcast, Related. Okay, Elaine. So I would not call you a Luddite by any means, right? We're
No.
obviously you're not. You use the internet. I think of you as someone who really enjoys like your K-dramas, your Netflix. What is the K-drama site that you use?
Oh, Vicky.
Vicky, you use YouTube a lot, but you are more concerted. You haven't been on social media for a long time. So I'm curious to talk to you and sort of have this conversation with you just from that vantage point. But I
Yeah.
think the first entry point for me and the question I want to ask is, how do you think, again, coming from your perspective of someone who I think has been a little bit more intentional around integrating technology with your life, like how has technology, and I include social media, iPhones, all of that in there, already changed and or evolved your personal relationships or how you relate to the world?
So I might not be a Luddite, but I am, like you said, very intentional. I also don't necessarily upgrade to the newest version when things are available. For example, I am still using my iPhone 8. When it comes to social media, I have a presence on Reddit in that I have an account which I use to read Reddit, but
I was going to say, are you a lurker or are you a poster?
I am a lurker. I post occasionally, but then I actually go back like every week and delete what I posted.
Really? Wait, why? I'm so
Yeah.
curious.
For two reasons. One, because I'm not sure I want a permanent presence on the internet in that way where my thoughts are always accessible to
Yeah.
people in the future.
Yeah.
And two, because of Reddit's agreement with Google for mining AI data.
Oh, okay. This is fascinating. I learn something new from Elaine every day. I'm also now so curious if I've seen your posts on Reddit because I'm a lurker. I never post, but I do. I am known to lurk the Ask Women Over 30 and Ask Women Over 40
Yeah.
subreddits in particular. So if you ever post on that, yeah.
So I actually try to refrain from posting. It's just when something catches my attention and there's no other comment on it and I'm like, have people thought about this?
So you're a commenter, not an original poster.
Yes. I
Okay.
did one original post once in the fountain pen subreddit.
I love Reddit. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Wait, what was the okay.
So I had so I'm a fountain pen aficionado. And did you know this about me?
I did
And I had
not.
purchased an old fountain pen that was so I only buy used fountain pens.
Yeah, yeah.
So I bought a fountain pen from the mid 20th century that basically was in disrepair, and so I posted on fountain pens asking how to like restore it. And the responses I got were, like, incredibly helpful. Like, those
Yeah,
people know what they're talking about.
that's amazing.
So, yes, that is my one time I posted on Reddit.
That's amazing. Okay, so continue. So you do Reddit as part of your social presence, but again, it's very intentional.
I would say it's, like, my only social media presence.
Yeah.
I deleted Facebook. During the pandemic, I wanna say pre-2000 and I remember during the pandemic, like, I didn't have Facebook.
Yeah.
So, like, when people were, I think, going on social media during the first few weeks of lockdown, I didn't have social media already.
Yeah.
So, it must have been before then. Probably I had it did I have it in law school? I don't even know if I had it in law school.
Facebook. And what about your
Facebook.
Instagram? Because you had an Instagram at some
So,
point.
I had an Instagram account
Yeah.
and just never posted on it.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't the kind of like, I don't look at Instagram, and it's not, like, the kind of media I, engaged with,
Yeah.
readily, so I just didn't have it. I mean, I probably still have an Instagram account, but I couldn't tell you my username or my password.
Yeah.
Um, and then Twitter I had, same deal as Instagram, I never used it until Elon Musk announced he was buying it, and I deleted it
Did it.
because I
Yeah.
wasn't sure where that was going.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's really helpful context in terms of how you currently are or are not online.
Yes.
I'm
Oh,
super
I do have
curious.
a LinkedIn account, Carlin.
Oh
Very
yes. Oh
important.
yes. I will actually say, not to get too much into me yet, but LinkedIn is maybe where I have my most online presence right now. And I don't love it because I think it's becoming even more feed endless scroll vibes, which
Yeah.
I don't like.
So I also have limited presence on LinkedIn in that I will keep my job situation updated,
Yeah.
but I do not go on there to network or anything.
Yeah.
Um, Mostly because I find it very depressing.
Yeah.
Which is actually probably why I am not on most social medias,
Yeah.
is because it becomes a comparison activity, and
Yeah.
I always walk away from it feeling worse about myself
Yep.
rather than feeling I've gotten anything of use out of it.
Agreed.
And though I may have kept in more constant contact with people, I felt that the interactions were very superficial.
Yep. So going back to the question then, how do you feel that technology, either the lack thereof or your use of it or how you were using it and then how you changed it, has changed your personal relationships?
So I think that a lot of people have stayed on social media and have used that as a substitute for in life interactions.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are a lot of people who are very active on social media who have a lot of friends on social media, and I am not one of them.
Mm. Yeah.
I do not have friends on social media. I do not have a lot of friends, but
Mm.
um my friendships are based in real one-on-one in-person interactions.
Yeah.
So I might not have as many friends as people. I think people have moved away from in-life relationships in some ways,
Yeah.
and because they're busy, because in-person relationships take time. And so to nurture them, you really have to invest in them.
Yeah.
And social media allows for a more casual interaction, and I've just decided that that doesn't fulfill me in the same way that less but more intense relationships have served me.
Oh, this is so interesting. I have a follow-up question,
Yes.
and it's making me wonder what my definition of this is. What is a friend?
So I think I have a very Wow. Did not anticipate that question. So I think I have a very narrow definition of a friend. I'm not sure what that definition is. I'll get into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I think that when I'm talking to people, people assume that I'm their friend before I assume
Hmm.
that I'm their friend.
Interesting. Yeah.
Um, like for me, people are acquaintances for way longer than I think is
Hmm.
normal. And I also think that for me, friendship is not something that is lifelong.
Yeah.
Like you could have been my friend at some point in my life, but are you still a friend? If
Yeah.
we're not in constant contact, maybe not.
Yeah.
But what is friendship? I think friendship is, I don't know if I have a definition for that, but people you can rely on.
I the question came up for me as you were talking about social media and quote friends, right? Because all of these platforms essentially use the concept of friendship as, you know, you add someone, you add a Facebook friend, right? Um and I think the internet and social media, and I think AI, which we'll get into in a second, has built this superficial layer of like what friendship is or what it means.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think as you were talking about it, it made me ask the question of myself, what do I consider a friend? And what does it mean to really be in friendship?
Yeah.
I think, as we were preparing to have this conversation and prepare for this episode, the thing that kept coming up for me and a lot of the research we were doing was that I think friendship is really, you really have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Both be able to allow yourself to really be seen and allow others to be seen. It has to be a two-way path. And this is a broad generalization. I think there are exceptions, but people don't do that very often under social media. Within
Yeah.
social media is that two-way vulnerability.
Yeah. I do think that there are people I trust that I wouldn't consider friends. I think that there's also a layer of comfort. Like I'm willing
Yes.
to impose on people
Yeah.
and have them impose on me in
Yeah.
ways that are based on trust, but
Yeah.
are about conforming to other people in ways that perhaps make me uncomfortable, but because of who it is, it's okay.
Yeah. I think another thing, I agree with that. And one thing I've been thinking a lot about recently, I think especially as someone who is living in a big city and my friendships have changed over the
Yeah.
years, right?
As they do. Yeah.
As they do. And I think one of the things that I started grappling with, especially in the midst of the pandemic, was what are the different kinds of friends also as well? Who are the deeply rooted tree roots of friends who are sort of my lifelong ride or dies, or the people that I really go to when in need and who come to me when in need. But then also who are the people who I just go, you know, grab a drink with or
Yeah.
go play tennis with or go on a walk with. And those may
Yeah.
not necessarily be the same kinds of people per se. So anyway, I don't know. I know we're going a little off topic here, but it just sort of brought up the question for me around what do we even consider a friendship? Because I think that is a really important baseline for how we think about personal connection and personal relationships and what tech might be doing to those
Yeah. And I
friendships.
do think that that relates back to the reason I got off of Facebook, which I think was people in the very beginning of Facebook often talked about how many friends they had on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
And that was just not a conversation that I was interested in being part
Yeah. It
of.
was very much quantity over quality, right? You wanted to
Yeah.
have, if you had over 1,000 friends on Facebook,
Yes.
that was great. It
And I
basically, yeah, yeah.
and I was the person who went through every month and tried to delete as many people as I could. So Maybe I just ill suited for
Yeah.
Facebook.
It is interesting. It started to quantify friendship in a way that maybe we hadn't quantified friendship before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. So maybe then switching gears a little bit into AI, artificial intelligence, and specifically generative AI, which is the chatbots and maybe more conversational engagement with technology, which I think is the newest pioneer of where and how tech innovation is going. And I think what's really interesting about it is we're reading news articles, for example, about people who are building like romantic relationships with
Yeah.
their chatbots. And you have referenced that your fear in using AI, for example, is that the questions you would ask of a chatbot detract from the questions that you might ask of another human being or something that you might do offline. Correct?
Kind of, but not quite. So I think that I tend to look at things from a high level.
Yeah.
And when I see AI, like I think on a personal level, I actually don't mind if people have relationships with AI. If it
Yeah.
makes you happy, go for it.
Yeah.
But I see each relationship as a link in the broader fabric of society.
Hmm.
And when you link to a dead end, I think if if um if a lot of people link to things that are not part of the fabric of society, then the fabric starts to fall apart. You
Hmm.
can only have so many holes before the whole thing falls apart.
So I guess, but just playing devil's advocate here
Yeah.
is what if the fabric of society, like what if AI is the fabric of society, for example?
So I think I have two answers to that. One is if AI is the fabric to society, I'm not sure I want to live in it. um, and two, I'm not sure it can be because I'm not sure that there's anything actually there. And I could be wrong.
Well, I think it
Um,
goes back to the vulnerability component, right? Which is an AI cannot, as much knowledge as we can give it or as much as it can generate, it cannot be fully vulnerable or fully empathetic because at the end of the day, it's not human.
right. It can experience. And I think experience is where you actually relate to other people.
Yeah.
Like this is why I started fearing I think at the very beginning because the first thing that became and I know not the very beginning, but like when it entered the public consciousness, I think in a
Yeah.
more upfront way in like 2020,
Yeah.
we were talking about how it was looking at generating art. It was
Hmm.
stealing other people's art. And I
Yeah.
think that there is an IP aspect of that I think as a lawyer felt wrong. But to me it was actually more about art is one of the ways in which we communicate as humans to each other
Yeah.
about shared experiences. Um and it's the maybe because I like to participate in art, I'm giving it a bigger role than it should have, but I think art is in some ways the foundation on which we build a common society. Um,
Hmm.
we both written and visual and music and television, it's how we come to a general cultural consensus is this is how I experience the world. I want to share it with you. How do you respond to it?
Yeah.
And it's like the first method in which we communicate with each other. And when you start putting middlemen in looking at that art, chopping it up, repackaging it, I just think that our conversation becomes muddled.
Hmm. What if you are? and again, this is, I think, an exploration and a question that I have not answered yet for myself. But as someone who works, again, in consumer tech and also a lot with creatives and in creative industries, and especially within the entertainment, I am not convinced that I think there's a difference between putting all of your eggs in the bucket of, okay, I'm just going to write one prompt and AI is going to generate my art or my film or my song for me. There's
Mhm.
another to use it more as a tool, right? Do you feel like even in that case it is, I'm trying to think of a good example here, is actually I'll use the movie Flow, for example, right, which just won the Academy Award for Best Animated Film.
Yeah.
And maybe not using like AI per se, but a lot of that animation was designed using a program and a technology and a tool to help build that world, right? In a
Yeah.
way that those artists probably wouldn't have been able to afford to tell that story otherwise.
Yeah.
So, um, so there's like that on the one hand, versus there's the version where there's a whole team of visual effects, motion graphic designers who are able to build that fully on their own and do it more through like craftsmanship. But I would argue that Flow is also an example of craft, but it just used a tool to do it using like AI in this. If you use AI as a tool to get towards your creative vision, is that still undermining humanity?
So, I don't know if I have an answer, but I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
One, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And 2, are you looking at one person specifically or at humanity in aggregate?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answer to this. I think there is a world where, I mean, if I'm being super super honest, I've been feeling very nostalgic for pre-technology times recently. Um
Me always.
yeah, like I am tired of my screens. I am tired of being plugged into the internet all the time. I am tired of like constant convenience, to be
Yeah.
honest. Because I think what it does is you could live in a world, for example, where you just stay home all day and you get your DoorDash delivered, you get your groceries delivered, you access entertainment through your streaming services, you ask all of your questions to the internet or a chatbot. And that is a world of convenience, but it means that you're not outside going to the grocery store,
Yep.
having a chat with a cashier, checkout person,
Yep.
saying hi to someone on a hike, um, asking a friend for advice. I miss that world. So to answer your question, I'm like, ideally, I think the world is probably a better and healthier place when this is so weird, and I'm making a big generalization here, but there is a world like before the internet that I think is a better version of the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to undermine its, I think, positive impact in connecting the world too. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think
It's
I
yeah,
think when we talk about the internet, to follow up what you're saying, we often talk about efficiency,
yeah,
and I think maybe it's the US, but I think we've become so enamored of efficiency, we
and
often
productivity.
fail.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we often fail to acknowledge that there are times when efficiency matters, and there's
yes,
times when efficiency is beside the point.
yeah. Well, and I think, and this is maybe the crux of it all, is right now it feels like AI is more in service of capitalism than it is
Yes.
of the betterment of humans. right?
Yeah.
It's really, and you have pointed this out in conversations we've had before, it's being run essentially by big tech companies, by big tech billionaires, um, and being driven around how do we make companies make more money,
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe where AI, and again, as someone who uses it for work pretty often, it still kind of gives me the ick because I don't think anyone's really having any profound conversations around what is it really doing for humanity. It's really more about how do we just make things more productive and more efficient.
Yeah.
So I guess then, just bringing us all full circle, and I think I know the answer. We've talked
Yeah.
about this
Well,
before.
yeah.
What were you going to say?
No,
No,
go
no,
on.
no. It's okay. I guess just AI is not going anywhere.
No.
That's the inevitable. So how do you plan to use it or not? And for example, in your law career, for example, if there comes a point where that becomes a crucial skill to have, will you adopt it? Will you not? Where do you draw the line personally?
Yeah. So I do think that there are ways in which law firms are already starting to integrate AI. Um, but I think my position is to resist the use as much as I can for as
Yeah.
long as I can.
Yeah.
And I do think that there will be a time when it becomes inevitable because we are all subject to our capitalist overlords. But I'm just not willing to lay down and take it at this point.
Yeah.
I'm still, maybe that's a bad way of saying it. I'm not ready to submit to the inevitable yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And so what is your alternative? I'm just like, what is your
What are you going to, I suspect, continue using it as a tool going forward?
yeah, yes. I mean, I I am trying to be really intentional. And I it's interesting. I'm being very intentional right now just about all of my tech use, to be
Yeah.
honest. I've been trying to be very screens down on the weekends, and screens down, I will say, does not include my TV at the moment because I love my Netflix, and there's a new Survivor season and a Severance season, White Lotus season. So like,
And you
got to
got to watch these
I
things. Yeah.
gotta get my content, but it does feel more passive, right?
Yeah.
I think the thing that I am really struggling with from a just emotional, mental health, frankly, like a little bit, I'm just like addicted to the internet is really what it is.
Yeah.
And the smaller the device and the more approachable and accessible the internet becomes, the more I get pulled into it. I don't like the feeling of being on a walk and I think of a question and my initial reaction is let me pull out my phone and Google search it.
Yeah.
So I recently completely dumbed down my phone. I got one of those dumb phone apps that just completely minimalizes your phone. And I can't really take off Safari fully from the browser. Damn you, Apple. But I have tried to make it as inaccessible as possible to see if that will help. Um, I'm off social media, as you know. Minus LinkedIn, but even that, I have a newsfeed eradicator that goes on because I do use LinkedIn for networking quite often, just messages with old contacts and whatnot. But every time I sign into LinkedIn, I get a little quote instead. It doesn't show me my newsfeed, which is helpful. So when it comes to AI, I do a lot of strategy consulting, and AI is a really helpful tool for research, I will say, and a really great sounding board. But I am trying to be a lot more intentional about how you use it from a more of a personal level. I'm trying to make the distinction between what is like professional AI use and what is personal AI use. I'm working on a new venture with a co-founder, and we've been using AI a little bit from a research perspective, but we are very concerted on not using AI for any of our actual output, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And when it comes to personal things like asking questions, I'm becoming a lot more cognizant of when I'm asking ChatGPT for advice, for example, versus prompting it to research, and trying to instead reroute those advice questions to real people in my life
Yeah.
instead, even if it takes longer to get an answer. And even if it's an answer that maybe I don't like.
Yeah. And I think that's what wise people are doing. I think wise people are drawing a line somewhere for themselves and figuring out what works for them. What works for me is just a more strict approach, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's better. It's just that's how I've come to the assessment of where I want to draw the line.
Yeah. Yeah. We shall see. My fear is, and I already see this happening, as people are just adopting AI wholeheartedly the way that we adopted social media. And there have been really big repercussions to social
Yeah.
media. And I think there will be really big repercussions to AI. So,
So maybe you need people like me, not because what we're doing is right, but because what we're doing is different.
yeah,
And just pulling attention.
yes, agreed. Here's to offline living is basically. Can we all just go back to the early 90s? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, please, actually.
Please.
In all ways.
Always. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our conversation this week, we look forward to sharing more with you.
Follow us now so that when our next episode premieres in 2 weeks, you can be sure not to miss it. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts.
See you next time, everyone.